What a lovely day! Oh, yeah!
Not quite my turn.
They knew, and they let it happen. We will not wait any longer. Give us the vote.
Take him to the booth.
I understood that reference. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Are you not entertained?
Great Scott!
It's not the Messiah. It's a very naughty boy.
Well, good movies.
Another year. Anyone's now of big note for yourself that stand out to you as great ones, whether we saw done 2010, 12, 13, more into the future.
I think we need to go into like the later half of the later years. I don't know why, but 2017 is one that's sort of screaming out to me a bit.
Okay.
I don't know if it's just because one of my favorite films, which did have like a really strong universal impact, was out in this year, I believe. For me, I really want to talk about Get Out because we've talked about this a little bit, but I genuinely think that it is the film that made me have any form of interest in horror, which is a remarkable feat in and of itself, but
yeah,
also just one of the strongest social commentary films I've seen in a while. And the fact that I know that David has qualms with like the actual goriness of it, but I think that's something that pretty much all horror is going to deal with to some extent. So that's not a film specific critique, so don't bring it up. But just the fact that you have this situation where you have an incredibly unnerving, tense atmosphere throughout the film, the fact that you have like a black character like surrounded by not just the idea of like, you know, very, very full on creepy white people. You have black people who still embody those sort of values that those white people have, and just the idea of why is this problem, why is this happening. You have incredibly liberal racism issues sort of address this idea of just, you know, overly supporting like black people on the virtue that they're black, you know, still giving them and just not addressing them as people themselves. Like all issues like addressed by this film brilliantly, and just the way in which they use like the hypnotic scenes of just the shots of the sinking into the couch, incredible atmosphere, and just like really, really well done for me. And it was one of the standouts for the year. So
yeah,
because it obviously came out quite early on as well, so that so it came out February of that year.
Yeah.
And there were already a movement saying like if this had just been a month earlier, it could have been in contention for the Oscars much sooner. But it's not, so we're going to have to keep drumming and hoping it gets support for the next Oscars, which it does, and then it ends up winning a screenplay award, which is fantastic. Yeah,
and a great example of you know, a rising talent in Jordan Peele, which, you know, has continued his success with us. You know, so
yeah,
you know,
with us, with his remake of The Twilight Zone, which is still yet to watch.
So yeah, you know, very good filmmaker, and you know, very credible in like what we said in terms of bringing diversity. I think on reflection, like in terms of talking about like my original issues, after watching Us, probably I wouldn't say gore so much because gore is more, but yeah, just the fact that then you get so much of the psychological and social commentary throughout that film, but then it just goes into like a sort of like, you know, chase, you know, horror fight sort of film. But again, in reflection and rewatch and stuff, I think, you know, I did enjoy it a lot more, and it does hammer home things like you know, the sort of like embodying of the different characters. So when you get like the sort of two grandparents, etc., who sort of like make an appearance, I think is really great. You know, that year as well was very strong for your awards contenders as well. A big one which I wanted to mention, because you've had so many different war films that have appeared throughout the years and talked about specifically different or specific moments in history, which several films throughout this year alone dealt with, is Dunkirk. And because you've also had so many Christopher Nolan films throughout this year, so even though Inception and Interstellar were very much contenders for other years in which, you know, I almost put them in, but like I said, it was just, to me, was like you know, Interstellar was very much going on that space thing that Gravity did, and I think a lot of the action elements of Inception, while credible, is still, you know, is it the, you know, the absolute peak of storytelling? Not sure. But Dunkirk, that's where I think that he really is massively brings in the idea that he has lots of different elements going on. He has that great sort of like technical elements to his films, and also like his sort of like desaturated and sort of like dull look to this film really adds to that sort of like wartime era, but also just giving you like a sort of rare moment of joy in a Christopher Nolan film when you have that sort of like great moment with the music, sort of becomes very eclectic when the boats are arriving at Dunkirk. You have some great moments with Tom Hardy like up in the sky. You have some fantastic aerial sequences in that film. You get the great like boat stuff as well with that guy who sort of like injured himself. So I think that this film really works on lots of different levels. It's a real experience. Again, was, you know, it was a big film when it was out for things like IMAX and 70mm film. And yeah, it has got some great performances in it and really has sort of like, you know, lived up to its reputation afterwards as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well on a very technical sort of storytelling level, I think one of the things I loved about Dunkirk was its ability to shape expectations based on the fact that a lot of the film is told out of order.
Yeah.
And I think that drums up like a lot of tense and like tension for the film because of that. So the fact that you see planes in one shot like flying over and like bombing something, but then later on in the film you're waiting for like salvation to come, but then you see those same planes come again and you just realize, oh, that's what we've already, oh no.
Yeah,
it's just that sense of panic. Also, just because obviously one of the big comparisons for that year was between that and The Darkest Hour. Just a film that much better uses the famous Winston Churchill speech right at the end where they're playing that dramatic music and they're playing that speech of like, we will fight them on the beaches, and just watching that all rally together. Just incredible culmination of the film. It was one of my like personal favorites in terms of what I wanted to win Best Picture,
but also very deserving in a lot of the technical categories.
Oh yeah, it was easily going to win like technical elements. Like it won sound design, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like it was always going to win that.
Yeah. Another war film, but completely different, which I saw pinpointed for that year, even though again this is from a franchise and you could argue for other films in this franchise. I did pick out War of the Planet of the Apes as my personal favorite, purely just because we were talking earlier about like closing out franchises. And I think just that the fact that they closed out this trilogy so well, that's just why I wanted to highlight this. So even though I think Dawn of the Planet of the Apes has some great elements in it and maybe has a lot of better sort of sequences than War, I did still have to really appreciate what a powerhouse of a film this is for Andy Serkis as a character. Again, spoilers for the end of the film if you haven't seen it, but you know, the sort of like death that we see of Caesar was really iconic, I feel. Again, fantastic score from Michael Giacchino, really memorable, really nice to listen back to, and really gives you that sort of wintry snow falling feel that they give you throughout the film. And it's great also, again, ending the film on that high of seeing like Maurice and the other apes. You sort of really have that pitted battle of Caesar versus
Woody
Harrelson's character. And yeah, I think there was a lot of like enjoyable elements, such as the sort of like the talking ape, and the sort of prison escape sequence was all quite fun. You got like the different type, you got like your typical traits of the apes films, where you got like your orangutans and your baby monkeys and your gorillas all having their like jobs to do and the different strengths of those characters. And yeah, I just really appreciated how they made this very much like a kind of like a Logan of apes, in the sense that like it was like, you know, Caesar was the sort of like lone character of this film, and really sort of made it like a really artistic and beautiful film.
Yeah, I think that's my problem with the film. You're definitely right to say that it is a Logan of that universe. I think for me, I wanted something a bit more climactic and I wanted something a bit more certain.
Yeah.
So I think that's my big problem with the film, is that it still wasn't sure that the apes had completely taken over.
Yeah.
So when you then see the idea of like, you know, the original shuttle like coming back, it didn't feel warranted to me that was necessarily going to be like the idea of control. I was still expecting something a bit more climactic in terms of the battle, because the one major battle we see between like, you know, forces tends to be like, it was that still very low scale, and I think that dampened the film for me. So I naturally enjoy something like, say, Rise a bit more, because again, like the idea of like, you know, seeing how these apes developed in the first place is something that's naturally more interesting to me.
Yeah, and you literally see them like throwing spears and stuff on the bridge and everything. You actually see humans versus apes a lot.
Yeah, you
more,
see, so that felt more apocalyptic in a sense, which War sort of didn't for me, but I completely understand.
Yeah. No, I do agree. For a film called War, the Planet of the Apes,
it's not a war.
No.
It's not a war. So.
Yeah. So this is the one time that I will give credit to the studio, but I also think Wonder Woman is a credible, noteworthy film. Just because even though at the time you're like, oh yeah, that's a decent origin story, it really has, you know, stuck with me and stayed with people ever since, because people are really excited about the new film. The new trailer really made like a big impact on social media. And I think it is because like, there's really fantastic sequences in that film. There's also, again, we've talked about music scores. You know, we've said about how divisive the Wonder Woman theme is and that.
But the actual like score around it is perfectly fine. Yeah,
and you know, there's a video online which does a great job of showing how I think it's Henry Gregson Williams takes that theme that Zimmer made and sort of like brings it subtly in throughout the film. So he does it like slowly until he builds it up for that big action sequence. And that's what makes this stand out for me. So even though the end can be a bit of a sort of CGI fest, I think there's such heart and character in this film, which so many other big blockbusters miss out, especially DC films. But they really make you sort of love this character. You've got Chris Pine, who's always so charismatic, as we discussed in Star Trek films, but to have great moments, the like, you know, where she takes the ice cream. I still love that. Like, you know, you should be proud of this. But also that running through the trenches, you know, I think that is such a good scene. And, you know, I've watched it several times since and like listened to the soundtrack from it, and it is fantastic. Patty Jenkins went into that film with such a vision, and she just executed it brilliantly. And I think even though, like I said, the villain is a bit lackluster, I think actually having that set in the World War One, even though I was a bit like, oh, they're just trying to do a marvel of setting it in the time of Captain America, World War Two. But actually, once I saw that trenches scene, I think that completely convinced me. It's a fantastic sequence.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, just finally giving like credence to the idea that a female superhero film can work. Yeah, because that was something that was just bandied about for ages, and the idea that it wouldn't work. That's why for a while, even though many people wanted it, and we're only now going to be getting it in 2020, the idea of the Black Widow film, it just didn't take off. So the fact that I will give DC credit for the fact that they did pull it off, and just being an okay film was enough to basically make it an amazing film because of what it actually means in terms of, hey guys, this can be financially viable.
Yeah, it's kind of like Iron Man in the sense you're like, oh, that was a good film, but it's just the more you sort of think about it, the more you realize what works so well about it and why it works as an origin film. And I also think it's really stand out in terms of like, a lot of the times these superhero films cannot stand out because they don't make the character that unique. But I think they do a really good job of making Wonder Woman unique in that she's not just this brawler. They use the rope in such a great, vivid way. You got this glowing rope that she like whips around everywhere. So they make her quite unique, opposed to your sort of like Captain Marvel or Superman and that kind of thing. But yeah, you know, I think that was a big one from that year. Another quick one I want to shout out is Lady Bird as well, on, you know, Greta Gerwig did a great job with.
We do not think that Greta Thunberg was making films at that age.
She's far too busy. Another great film for diversity, showing like Timothée Chalamet as well as a great actor, but also Saoirse Ronan. A great film to epitomize high school time, you know, the emotions you go through that. They make a fantastic relationship with the mother and daughter in that. And there's just a lot of relatability in that film. And I think hopefully Greta Gerwig will be a lot more recognised for Little Women or some film in the future for the Oscars, but Lady Bird at least still had that Best Picture nomination. So that film as well really sort of stood out to me and is it's really funny and really, really poignant for its dramatic moments. And like we said earlier about Silver Linings Playbook, it shows about how comedy and drama can work so well to make things dramatic, and you can feel those moments because they are slightly funny and slightly, realistic, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, just there's a lot of understated moments with that film as well. Like I remember, because it's basically a breakdown of like all of her relationships and like going through and just they were like, it's such realism and like to certain scenes that other films would give such poignance to. Like I think the scene where she loses her virginity was just done in a very, very quick, awkward sort of sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Like does bring in like a lot of that humor and also just the relatability, like why Lady Bird is so effective.
Yeah.
I genuinely really enjoyed the film. Like in terms of like when you're comparing like everything from the decade.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say that it like makes the most impact, but it's definitely, a good start for Greta Gerwig.
Yeah.
And I'm intrigued to see how little Women does.
Yeah.
On the back of that.
Yeah. And even like I said, when you're looking at it at that year, but yeah, for the decade, like I said, maybe can get a bit more lost. I think definitely we need to go to 2014 off the back of some of those conversations, unless there's anything else you had from 2017. But
all I was going to acknowledge is that Greatest Showman is a thing that obviously comes out right at the end of 2017 and basically massively impacts 2018. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Again, like, have whatever opinions you want about it. Like, again, it's one of those things where like cultural impact alone just cements its place, and also just does bring back the idea of like the movie musical in ways that La La Land tried but didn't quite get to in terms of lambastic nature.
Yeah. And even just like visually, like I said, we've talked a lot about like how moments and stuff can stand out to you and make those like films of the decade. Even though you watch the entire film and the story of it might not be the greatest, you can still look back on it and remember that sort of vividness of like the circus scenes and the tightrope song that like, Zac Efron and Zendaya have, etc. And the great like sort of like From Now On, all of those moments like still sort of like go, well, yeah, those are great movie moments, despite like what it might work as a film. And again, seeing it, like I mentioned before, in the sing-along, you can see how much it resonates with people and stuff then.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I sort of wanted to go on to 2014 because, like I said, we talked a lot there about awards contenders and big franchises. And like I said, we mentioned Thor Ragnarok, but this is also the year that Guardians of the Galaxy came out. So yeah, I'll use that opportunity to talk about why I think, to me, that stands out as potentially one of my favorite MCU films. I think even though as much as I enjoy the Avengers films, it's still hard to not give credit to those films that work on their own without having to watch any other films. So I think Guardians, I love Guardians 2, and again, it's a toss-up for me which one I prefer, but I have to highlight Guardians 1 as the one of the decade, because I think you can still watch it on its own without watching any other films, and it still works perfectly fine. I think Thanos works quite well into the film as well, with, again, not having to know much about him. But how much it changed the conversation. Like you said this the other day when we were talking about trailers, you said like, oh, the Hans Zimmer era of trailers with the Star Trek one, and then Guardians of the Galaxy completely changed everything. And I think the same could be said for movies. Like Suicide Squad would not be the film it was if it wasn't for Guardians of the Galaxy. They're like, oh, just throw a bunch of songs into a film and make it work. No, you need to like link them into the script like James Gunn does, and actually have them be a part of the story, which I think Volume 2 does better. But again, you can't deny that like the cast walk into Cherry Bomb is like one of the like iconic moments of like the past decade.
Also, it's such a film that on paper people argued about whether or not it would work, and it just
does. Yeah,
more than does. It just blows it out of the water. The fact that you have such strong moments. You have like the arrow scene, and just the fact that it's been like foreshadowed throughout, and you're wondering, well, how powerful is this arrow? And it turns out to be akin to one of the most dangerous weapons out there. You have a talking tree who could only say "I am Groot," and a raccoon, and everyone's like, "This is never going to work. Nobody's going to take this seriously." You have a film which has a cameo from Howard the Duck.
Yeah. And the fact that moments that are built up, you have like the I Am Groot, like when he uses his branch and like he like hits around those enemies and
Yeah.
stuff. But you've got so many iconic moments as well in terms of like baby Groot dancing at the end of the film. You know, you've got like Rocket like kicking grass and getting angry. You've got loads, like, I think the action sequences from that film really stand out. Like Nebula, like I think without, you know, she wouldn't have had such a good role as she did in Endgame and Infinity War if it wasn't for the Guardians films. And again, that's what I love about Volume 2 is that they flesh out those characters. But again, you just need to give like credit to Volume 1, if you want to call it that.
And just the fact that you have a band, you basically have like a band of criminals and reprobates just coming together, becoming heroes, is essentially doing what Suicide Squad tried and failed to do.
Yeah.
But also just the fact you just have a series of characters, like you have perfect comic foils to each other. The fact that you have a series of kids like looking at Drax thinking, like, yes, I understand the sort of trials you go through in terms of literally interpreting everything.
Yeah, yeah.
You have like people like getting behind Gamora in a big way.
Yeah. So you have people who have new heroes to look to because there's like those alternate heroes to look at now. I think also visually, I think like a lot of the criticism that MCU can have is that they can sort of look like carbon copies, or they can have that MCU look, so the costumes and everything look kind of similar. But again, I think James Gunn has such a vision with these films, and I think the digital and VFX work that they do on these films is what makes it look so good, is that they have a really bold look to them, and that's what stands out to me. When they're on the different planets, they really stand out. And you know, if you were to look at Star Wars and Guardians, even though they're both set in space, both have different aliens and stuff like that, you know, they're both very strikingly completely different, even though they've got like similar attributes. And I think that's again testament to James Gunn and the Marvel team for having faith in that film. It's just that you know, that's one of the big things.
Yeah,
and the film
like the only major weakness of the film is something that's shared across the majority of the MCU, which is the fact that like
the villain
Ronan is not particularly interesting.
No.
Like his best scene is where he's looking at Peter Quill dancing and just going, what are you doing?
Exactly. But when you look at it back on like great highlights of the decade, that's what makes me think that it does still work so good as a film. Because even though you're not judging it as what are the best villains or the best films, but like having that dance off scene is again, you know, great.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I know there's from 2014. There's definitely a film that you are going to want to talk about, Craig.
Yep,
and that
absolutely the Lego Movie.
Right.
I'm saving it up.
Yeah,
I'm saving it up. There are other films to talk about.
Okay, right.
But
yeah,
we are
enough.
saving it.
Right. Okay.
I genuinely wanted to talk about the Lego Movie because I think, again, if we're going to look at strong Chris Pratt performances, 2 films that on paper shouldn't have worked, but absolutely do. I think Lego Movie is an absolute game changer when it comes to animated films, because everyone thought it was just going to be a massive cash grab, and what was it? It was genuinely complex, like funny, innovative. Like the animation style really worked. It was like the most different sort of animation. The fact that it just looked stock motion.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's just such loving care. But also just the fact they had like a much deeper message that anyone would have given it credit for. The idea of just like holding on to childhood innocence, and just how that portrayed itself in the story, like played out by the boy with the Lego. It was just fantastic. It was just absolute fun ride, and also just made me happy to just feel a bit childish. The fact that lots of the sound effects is just a boo 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 boo.
Well, again, like Guardians of the Galaxy, it's making yourself stand out to be different, and that's what that does brilliantly, because there are so many animated films, and that's what the Lego Movie does brilliantly, is that it makes it visually stand out, audibly stand out, but also stand out in terms of like its ideas and its jokes and its story, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else from 2014 you want to bring up? I
did want to mention Selma, because I think that, again, we're talking about like great directors. Unfortunately, Ava DuVernay has not really had a great moment since Selma, which I think is just mad, because when you saw that, you're like, oh, she's going to be the next big thing. And Jordan Peele has had that moment, but unfortunately she had like Wrinkle in Time, and she was gonna do Black Panther but dropped out.
Yeah.
So she will get her day one day, I hope, because Selma is such a fantastic film, and I'll still never forget my like that opening scene is still
Just the explosion,
yeah, it actually, like, the way that soul, like, rattles through you at the beginning, rattles through the 10 years to me, like, you're like, bloody hell. And we talked about biopics and, like, characters like Philomena Lee, and you get, like, Alan Turing in The Imitation Game.
But you can say Alan Cummings.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to watch that film.
Yeah.
The true coming-of-age story.
Alan Cummings as Alan Turing. No, yeah, the fact that you get such a fantastic performance depicting Martin Luther King, I think they weren't able to use his speeches because they were, like, trademarked or copyrighted or something. So then the fact that, like, I was watching that film thinking, like, oh, wow, you can really see why he was such a great speech maker, because they have such good speeches. And I was like, oh, those weren't the actual speeches? Then, wow, well done to the script team, and how good are the actual speeches then? But yeah, again, a film that works on so many different levels of having the importance of, like, a cultural movement, making a political statement, and not even one that's like, it's like Spotlight. It's not like the biggest, it's not like, you know, a film about 9/11 or something. Like, let's talk about the biggest thing that ever happened to shake the world. Like, no, let's talk about this, like, small thing that happened in Selma, and talk about why that's important and why it's an example of, like, the wider conversation. Because
it's definitely, I think it's definitely a story that deserves to be told, because I think everyone remembers the actual speech made at Selma.
Yeah.
But not what it meant to get there in the first place.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the trap falls of other biopics they've made in the past is, oh, well, let's talk about this entire guy's life, and then you just end up skimming over things. So to take Martin Luther King and go, well, let's do a depiction of this man through this one incident, I think works a lot better.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, but obviously your pick.
It's time at last to finally talk about Whiplash, y'all. So this is the actual, like, song. Yeah, absolutely. Whiplash, favorite film of all time. There is not enough time for me to talk about this film in, like, the absolute depth that I want to, but I mean, here goes. First of all, just the actual sound design of the film, just the music score, like the jazz theme throughout is just absolutely fantastic. And also, like, used to such great effect. So obviously, because you have, like, different forms of jazz. I still remember vividly, like, one of the opening set pieces, which is like Andrew Neiman, like, kind of running to a class or running home, and it has that and just the chaotic news. But you also have, like, the very quiet, somber moments of jazz. The fact that it's used very well throughout the film, like the music, and also just as an ending. Genuinely one of the most tense endings, something like akin to sort of Avengers level climax tension throughout. And what it is a man playing a drum solo. Like, that's how tense the entire thing is. That's how strong the emotional investment in the performance of this particular piece is is at this point, that we want him to succeed so much, because he's been through so much, like, you know, like torture and abuse in terms of perfecting his own craft, that we care, that we want him to actually, you know, get this solo perfect and make sure that it, you know, basically does meet the level of perfection he had. And it's something that, and, like, there's a lot of undersold moments, I think, because one moment that I quote a lot is the dinner scene with the family, where the family are making a big deal about the fact that one of the cousins is going to be, like, he's going to be playing football for a particular team, but then completely overlooking Andrew's achievements with his drumming and with his band, and just a discussion about, like, the nature of success and what it means to be successful. Like, it was just it's just something that resonated a lot with me because of my own relations with my own pastimes and, like, what is now basically my career, right? Yeah. That sort of interaction and relationship. Also, just the performances, like J.K. Simmons absolutely destroyed it and deserved that Oscar. Terrence Fletcher is still one of my favorite characters in films of all time, just because the degree to which he's willing to push people to success is just terrifying. And just like the screaming and like the level of insults. I mean, we both appreciate how much I love insults, right?
Yeah.
Like they're incredible pieces of dialogue. Like I can literally recite a lot of his insults. That's how iconic a lot of them are. And just also, I love the way that the film is edited as well. Like it really makes a lot of the distinct moments of playing instruments seem incredibly exciting. It has a very fast pace to the editing that seems to elevate the sound in a really strong way. And just this, just so many elements of this film that I genuinely enjoy. And like just every time I still get chills from watching it and just seeing like the power of like the interactions, like the philosophy of success. And there's the fact as well that you can look at the ending either as an incredibly triumphant or a morally devastating way, depending on how you view this. And I just love that about the film. And there's just no film that I've seen, certainly not in this decade, let alone films I've seen before, have accurately changed the way that I view a large amount of life. And I think that's what often defines somebody's favorite film, like the way in which it makes them see things on a different way. Whiplash is that film for me. And yeah, I know I'm thankful for you for making me go and see it, because we had no intention of seeing it. You suggested going. Dale and I were just like, we don't really know anything about this film. We hadn't even seen the trailer.
Yeah. It was a case of like, it's just this film about drumming, and you expect this kind of like, true life story about, this guy who like is determined to learn the drums. But it's like, no, this film is about...
It's emotionally intense. Like,
and that's what's great about it to me as well, is that I don't look back on it and go, oh, that's a film about drumming. It's not like you look back on it and think of it like you look at Cool Runnings, like, oh, it's a film about bobsleighing. It's like, no, like it's a film that is about, over obsession and determination and, dealing with very intense people and intense situations. And I think that's what's interesting as well, is when I've watched it with other people since, is that, people was like, oh, like, I didn't like the characters in that. They were, I didn't like them. And it's like, well, that's what's great about it, is that, you don't have to like them. And in some ways, like Miles Teller might be playing a character that you don't like, but that's not to say that the actual character or person is an unlikable person. It's just that he's in that stage of his life in which maybe years later he would go, oh, I was an absolute dick at that time. So I don't judge it on the actual character.
It's not even a case of he is like the ultimate dick.
Yeah.
It is a case of he's pushed that way because of the way he's being taught, right?
Yeah.
I think that's something you definitely can see if you watch the original short film.
Yeah.
He definitely comes across like a very naive child who's basically thrust into this world in which you have to adapt quickly.
Yeah.
And you have to take on that sort of aggressive stance.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's made, like we said with Jordan Peele, etc., it's made such a name for Damien Chazelle in terms of like we said with Greta Gerwig and Ava DuVernay for Selma, having that as like your sort of breakthrough project is not a bad way to start off. And I think La La Land does some great things. I think that First Man was like, unfortunate that wasn't given more recognition. But again, it is hard to reach the heights that Whiplash does. And
I find it annoying though that a lot of people know Chazelle more for La La Land than Whiplash, because it definitely seemed like Whiplash, for me, hit perfection, but for many people is considered that, it was essentially like the stepping stone going towards the film that he really wanted to make, which was the full-blown musical with La La Land.
I guess
that just irritates me.
I guess it's just the kind of same thing you'd get with your Scorsese's or Spielberg's, like as much as like they'd want to be remembered for Schindler's List, Jurassic Park is the more popular or glitzy film. But yeah, and I think, thank God for that film, for bringing J.K. Simmons back into our lives as well. We were mentioning Avatar before, great as Tenzin, but I always loved him as J.K. As J. Jonah Jameson. But yes, such a powerful performance in that, and again gives you what is so good about that film is about having like a real intimidating character, and you really understand where Miles Teller character is coming from because of that intensity you get from him, but also just downright sometimes funny lines as well.
Yeah. And also just the fact that in terms of star power, like it's J.K. Simmons and Miles Teller that basically drive the film. But there's not to say, like, in terms of like performances, they're the only ones worth talking about. But it's not a performance-driven film.
No.
Because everything about the film works. Like the cinematography, the fact that there's really dark environments at times. Because obviously you're often dealing with like auditoriums which are often pitch black apart from the light on the stage, which still maintains a really dark feeling to the film.
And when you get those close-ups of like his hands like bloody, and you get the sweat hitting the cymbals and stuff like that, like that's really iconic. I think
and just the fact that Miles Teller went through the effort of learning how to drum so he could ensure that those shots were as meticulous as possible.
You'd have to, I suppose. And I think the jazz is a character in itself as well for the film, and that's what's so good about it as well. Like, how many times have we walked into our local cinema and heard like the the soundtrack being played?
Yeah.
And I think that's such a big part of it, which again you don't get in much representation of that genre in film, which is also important to note. And sort of like the similar as you might come away from biopic, like, oh, I didn't know that. You come away going, oh, I didn't realize there was so much involved in like jazz, etc. So definitely deserving of like one of the films of the decade. And like sums up 2014, I think, for really having some standout ambitious films.
Yeah, it's just a shame that it had to lose out to Birdman.
Yeah, I think when that year came, it was a technical thing, but it's funny then that sort of look back on it and go, well, again, as much as I give that film credit at the time, and I still give it credit now, I can't say, oh, it's the film of it's one of the films of the decade.
Here's the thing: I hear nobody talking about Birdman anymore.
I think it's because it's such a technical achievement that it's not a film as an achievement. It's just the technical thing of it. So
yeah, it is basically just a play put to film in a sense,
and a one shot, which we'll see how 1917 does in terms of trumping it or not. Talking about our more recent years, we might have talked about a lot of these films recently as well, and in this episode, so just sort of quickly go through them. I think we mentioned about how Joker has made a big impact. It's hard to talk about 2019 in terms of the decade because we haven't had much time to digest how they've sat in as the decade, but I sort of just jotted down Joker, Toy Story 4 and Endgame because of those elements that we said before, that that they're part of big franchises or they're part of things that are iconic. Toy Story 4 mainly went in for me because of how much you mentioned Toy Story 3 was great for animation, which I totally agree with, and I just felt the Toy Story 4, I was just still amazed by how they could make that shop look like a real antique shop, and I could see dust and reflections amazingly.
Yeah, but that's about all I would give it value for. I still have like major problems with like aspects of the story, as well as the fact that as a Toy Story film, it doesn't really follow much of the cast that we love.
No.
And sort of sideline them a bit too much.
But again, looking at the year as a whole, I'm still like considering we've had things like Lion King and Aladdin and Cats and all these other remakes and stuff like that. That's where it stood out a bit more for me because of that.
I don't know, like there are definitely smaller films I feel are stronger. So I think films like Us and Blinded by the Light deserve it a lot more, which is why I wouldn't want to discuss Toy Story 4.
No. Like definitely personally for me, Blinded by the Light and Us would be more prevalent. It's just, again, I just felt that until I've seen like awards contenders and stuff like that, I've just sort of put the big staple cultural films in there as the ones that stood out for me because, like I said, Joker, that end scene with the talk show was such a big moment. Endgame for encapsulating an entire 10 years of storytelling, and like I said, the animation quality of Toy Story 4 is why I've mentioned those. Any other things you wanted to mention?
No,
of
I
2019?
Not of 2019, no.
2018, again, same sort of like path. I think Infinity War was still of note for like how it sets up such a roller coaster of a film in so many action set pieces and so vividly fun. Bringing together that cast for the first time. Black Panther, like we said, similar to Get Out in what it does, and you said earlier about having like a largely black cast and also having an MCU film that really has a great story at its heart in the sort of Killmonger stuff.
Yeah, and also a fantastic villain.
Yeah, exactly, which is rare. Vice, which we've mentioned before, which is always fun. Again, fantastic score, fantastic political intrigue, and also the docudrama, which is quite different as well, which,
Yeah.
you know, we get to experience, and also has that element of, like I said, with things like Whiplash, of like giving you a character and really examining them to the point in which they show you the character's heart at the end of the film.
Oh, that speech is still one of the best speeches
Yeah.
I've seen in a while.
And also for me, like I mentioned this again before, was Can You Ever Forgive Me? So I feel like going off the back of the films we mentioned, like Philomena and Selma and Spotlight, this again works so well on the intimacy level and this all like digging into the character, understanding their motivations, really like embedding yourself in the emotions and the setting of New York, etc. So, you know, big props to that film as well. One I felt as well, like we mentioned before, was kind of like a meh year, was 2011.
Yeah.
So because I feel that the 1 year that's left, I think, is quite notable. So I'll mention my big film from that year was The Help.
Okay. I
like-
still haven't seen The Help, so I can't comment.
No,
But I've heard nothing but good.
It's a beautiful film. The fact that it has so many emotional moments, things that will get you blubbering, because like Viola Davis does a fantastic job, but also other people in that film do just amazing work. And even though sometimes it can appear as one of those sort of like book adaptations that is a bit soft and nicey, vivid, it still touches on those elements of segregation and you know, like class, which then ground it a lot more in reality. And there's even, like we mentioned with other films, dropping in other elements which aren't like they're packing loads of things in. It's told in a really effective way, having things like child loss and things like that, which are like fantastic emotional moments in the film. Hugo I just jotted down because, again, I felt it was like a nice celebration of film, bringing up George Mele in a Scorsese film that was quite different, and it was, again, one of the more successful sort of 3D films. And also the Harry Potter ending, we talked about Avengers, or starting that entire MCU, so I thought it was of note that Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 ending that entire series of films, which we saw like in the space of a week, which was quite a cinematic experience as well, seeing a Harry Potter film like every day for like 2 weeks, and then rounding it off with a great accumulation of that story by showing, you know, the grey music of John Williams, having like Voldemort, Snape, have all those stories told, and people still latch onto that and love those films and that franchise. Not so much maybe Fantastic Beasts, but that's what still holds Harry Potter together so strong in what they managed to achieve there.
What I would say about 2011 is I think there are films that I would happily be able to talk about if I'd been able to see them, but there are some films that I think get talked about ever so slightly in, like, you know, public discussions that I just haven't seen, so I can't comment on them.
Yeah.
Films like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, the fact that you've also got The Help, obviously I still haven't seen. The Artist, I still need to properly see. Moneyball, I still absolutely need to see.
Well, that's why I felt it was still a May year. So even for me, where I saw like The Artist, again, I felt that was a bit like a Birdman, is that like I didn't find that it was like a film of the decade, because you still, at the end of the day, you still have to go, well, they're still just paying tribute to those films of the silent era, so I can't say that it's like an amazing film of the decade, because it's piggybacking so much off.
Yeah.
Like I love what they do about the like the sound coming in later, etc. But again, I didn't find that it makes the entire film amazing, like we've talked about with Whiplash and all these other films that have so many different elements. It's just that it hinders on that one element so much. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, honestly, I wasn't that impressed by. It was great. You got to give it a high rating because it's a really intriguing film. But again, I didn't find that I was like bowled over by it. But yeah, that's why I just wanted to sort of like round off with 2016. Even though we've talked about so many awards contenders and stuff like that, I think it's just worth noting that here I couldn't pick like a standout film of the year, because there's just 3 films that I find so encapsulate what's great about big budget films these days and elements that we've talked about before. So even though we've gone through a lot of awards contenders and stuff here, there isn't one that stood out for me in this year. But the 3 films that I chose were Captain America Civil War, Zootopia, and Deadpool. I couldn't choose between any 3 of those films because I found that they all changed the game so much. I think that Zootopia did fantastic things, like we've talked about, having great animation and vivid storytelling, but also just having a completely different story and doing so right by having representation and the entire thing with like you know, some people might say it's a bit on the nose, but again, I think it was really important to tell that story at that time. Be like, you know, and let's talk about these people, like, you know, why a bunny officer can't, you know, be in the police force. That kind of metaphor is fantastic. And again, I still talk about, like, to this day, about like how emotional that sort of like end got me, in terms of the fact that like Nick gets that position. I found was really endearing. Deadpool, again, like I categorize it within that Thor Ragnarok Guardians. It wouldn't have happened if that sort of like trend wasn't started. So maybe Thor Ragnarok wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Deadpool or Guardians. Deadpool wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Guardians, and Guardians wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Avengers and Iron Man. So I find that those three films really do epitomize sort of like ambitious comic book, out there comedy storytelling. And then Civil War, like I said, even though a lot of people still put Winter Soldier as one of their highlights, I think from 2014, I loved Winter Soldier. I think it's fantastic, but I still feel the Civil War builds on that film and elevates every element of Winter Soldier so much.
Absolutely. And for somebody who wasn't the biggest fan of Age of Ultron, I admit it was good, but
yeah,
it wasn't quite what I was expecting. This was essentially, even though it's a Captain America film, this was the Avengers film that I was essentially waiting for. Something with like relatively personal stakes, just powerful moments, and just really believable, strong ways of just building on like on the world in which they have. Just the fact that they finally acknowledge the idea of like the accidental destruction that they cause, like the people caught in the crossfire of their conflicts, and the fact that they build upon it in a really strong way. Yeah, Civil War was definitely like one of my like standouts for that year. I think it might have even been the top of my list. That year. And massive fan of Zootopia and Deadpool as well. The only film I'd probably add to that, just in terms of like personal impact, was A Monster Calls. It had, again, it was just an adaptation which just one of the best child actors I've ever seen, and somebody I'm eagerly waiting to come back. But just again, the way it approached the story, just looking at a really difficult topic of a mother dying of cancer, just in a really sensitive, like fantastical way, by looking at like how you approach problems using those stories. Criminally underrated film that I just wanted to talk about. And also very
realistic as well, is that, you know, you watch it and like, I think we said at the time, like, are they going there? Are they saying that this is what the message of the film is? And you're like, oh wow, they are. And like, it's again so ambitious for being able to tell that, which you wouldn't have had like years ago, I don't think. And again, also the animation, you know, that they bring into it, and the monster itself, fantastic use of things like, you know, 2D animation and stuff like that.
And Liam Neeson.
Definitely like that would be a massive highlight for me as well. And also I just wanted to add, when we were saying about Civil War as well, I think what also works for me, if we weren't to mention any of the Marvel films in, say, talking about the entire decade, I think why Civil War works as well is because as much as you can have fun with the Avengers teaming up and everything like that, I still think the Civil War does such a fantastic job because it introduces Black Panther, Spider-Man, while also having all those characters you've had before, and doing a pretty good job of carrying on from Age of Ultron, which introduced about 4 or 5 characters itself as well. So having Vision, Wanda also play a big role. And that's why I would say that even if it was pitted against something like Endgame, I would maybe, you know, go towards that. I think those are 4 very deserving films. And that, obviously, like I said, that was the only other one you added to 2016. So I've sort of jotted down what I felt were the ones that we've sort of like agreed on, or were of highlight for different genres, which I feel which should go into the movie vault. The only ones I haven't included was just the ones we sort of breezed through. I don't know if you agree, but maybe 2011, just because we felt it was a meh
there's
year.
Nothing there.
I think Harry Potter, if we would talk about a Harry Potter episode, which is the best of the series. And again, 2019 is whether there's, you know, it's too soon to say.
Well, I mean, it's hard to evaluate a cultural impact when it hasn't fully embedded itself in culture.
2018, I said maybe Vice or Black Panther. What do you say?
I think both, like different reasons.
So, and then 2016. What do you say? Well, I'll go through what I've got so far, as whether we want to go as far as putting all 4 of them in. So I felt the Black Swan, 2010, Avengers, 2012, 21 Jump Street, Philomena,
Yeah.
Gravity, Hunger Games I put a question mark next to, Guardians of the Galaxy,
Yep.
Selma, Whiplash, Mad Max, Spotlight, Inside Out, Toy Story 3, Dunkirk. I put a question mark next to Wonder Woman, and then I've just jotted down Vice and Black Panther. But yeah, I don't know, Hunger Games, do you feel maybe again that would be a different conversation?
I think it's a different conversation.
Yeah. Same with, I don't know, Wonder Woman.
I think Wonder Woman there put it there for
Yeah.
cultural impact. I think of the ones I've mentioned,
Monster Calls, maybe, would you want to see in there? Or
I'd be interested to see it there. I also mentioned Lego Movie, but are we putting in Civil War, Deadpool?
I think definitely Civil War.
Yeah,
has to go in there.
Civil War and Zootopia, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, Deadpool, like I said, maybe not. I think it's like an.
I think it's
a film.
I think it's a film that everybody wanted to see made, but it's one of those films that once it was made, everybody talked about it for a bit, and then there have been other things that have been able to be more extreme in it and sort of taken over.
You can say if you were looking at like the best comic book films, it'd be in there, but when it was just again the best films all time, maybe not. So
it's also very reliant on a series of factors, which I think a lot of people could miss.
do you also put in Endgame just for the ideas?
Endgame I think needs to go in.
Yeah. So, and that was it for what the ones you jotted down. Was it like Lego Movie? I'm not sure what Monster Calls. Like I said, it is great.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if it's again had as big an impact, or you could say the entire decade that stands out. I think it's a great film. Don't get me wrong, but that's why I just feel that all the ones that we've mentioned or agreed on. So like Black Swan.
Yeah, that's fine.
Both made an impact. So. Going into the movie vault this week is our biggest amount of films ever, but we are talking about an entire decade. So, Black Swan, Avengers, 21 Jump Street, Philomena, Gravity, Guardians of the Galaxy, Selma, Whiplash, Mad Max Fury Road, Spotlight. Do you want to take the other half?
Inside Out, Toy Story 3, Dunkirk, Wonder Woman, Vice, Black Panther, Lego Movie, Civil War, and Endgame.
All of these films go into the movie vault. It is more full than ever. Right, cool. That was a very long and in-depth discussion, but I think a worthy one, and gives you a good idea of what films we have as some of our favourites and some real highlights of the past 10 years. Now we go on to our end game. What am I into? Let's see. Craig, over to you.
Okay, so obviously people who are keen listeners to the shows will notice that we don't really put David through his paces that much in terms of the end game. So I've done an end game, which was the Pixar review game, but David hasn't had anything to challenge him. So I've decided to take it upon myself, with this being the end of year, to have the end of year end game. Basically, what I've done is I've created a series of trivia questions based on content from our previous episodes, and I want to see how many David can remember. So you'll note that he's not playing against anyone. This is purely to see how much he can remember himself, because obviously he's the one editing these episodes. He should know what's going on in these shows. I have a feeling he doesn't. So there are 8 questions in total.
Yep.
And 1 bonus round at the end.
Cool.
So these are in no particular order. Mm-hmm. So question number 1. What was the bad review of Scream that Matt Troy overheard in our horror episode? Not the Halloween special, the last episode of Film Talk.
Yeah. Was it that it wasn't even a real ghost?
The best ever terrible quick review of a horror film I ever heard was I was on a bus after I'd watched Scream, and there was some women sat behind me. It was a rail replacement bus, the worst of all the buses. And one of them said, "What did you think of that Scream then?" She's like, "Oh, it was rubbish. You could tell straight away it wasn't a real ghost."
Excellent. So that's 1 point to David so far. Question number 2. How many times was the name Peter Cushing said by David in our Halloween special episode? Because I noted at the time that he said it a lot. I want to know if he actually went back and counted how many times.
I'm impressed. So you have got a number.
I've genuinely gone through and counted how many times you said the name.
This
Not-
is a multiple choice.
If you want, I can give you multiple choice.
I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Can I do it mathematically? So, like, okay, we had 15 minutes each to talk about
I mean,
each one.
you can work it out however you want. Like,
I don't know. I'm going to go... I'll guess 25. But if I'm way off, then you can give me multiple choice.
oh, you are way off.
Oh, right.
I feel like you're way off.
Right, okay.
Okay.
So what's the multiple choice?
Okay. Is it A, 8, B, 11, C, 14, D, 17?
Okay. I'm going to go 14. Oh.
The answer was B, 11.
Oh, okay. Well, it wasn't as bad
wasn't
as I originally said.
I think
then.
it was a case of you did them a lot. I think it was a case of there were like elements of quick fire for them. So in about 5 minutes, you said the name about like a good 8 times.
I suppose
and then later on, you just brought it up sparingly.
This is the version that has Peter Cushing. I can't exactly call myself a Peter Cushing fan, talking about his relationship with Peter Cushing, with him playing Dracula and Peter Cushing playing Van Helsing. And Peter Cushing as well, like, it just emphasised why I love him so much as Tarkin. And he is talking about Peter Cushing, like I said, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee like go at it so professionally. Peter Cushing has some fantastic scenes. Peter Cushing slaps Gerda. Peter Cushing, who's been throughout this film like a very well respectable man. Peter Cushing is fantastic. At which point Peter Cushing just shakes his head. I think in my head I was probably thinking about how many times I said Christopher Lee as well. So if you combine Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Question number 3. What were the first ever films that we put into the movie vault?
Okay. Officially, is it?
Officially.
Right. That would be Jaws.
So there's 3 answers.
Yeah. So it'd be Jaws. Did we put the entire Indiana Jones franchise, or was it?
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it's-
am loving this.
Yeah, you say there's 3 answers though.
There's 3 answers,
But
yeah.
it's 3 films.
No, it's not 3 films. There's 3 answers.
So it would be Jaws, the Indiana Jones trilogy,
Mm-hmm.
and Jurassic Park.
For Jaws, you are. For Jurassic Park, you are. For the Indiana Jones trilogy, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to give 3 points for that because that was 3 individual answers.
Yeah.
But, yep. So indeed, those were the first 3 entrants into the movie vault when we officially became Well Good Movies.
So going into the film vault this week is Jurassic Park, the Indiana Jones trilogy, and
Jaws.
Jaws, yes. So into the film vault you go. Yeah, I almost had E.T. there, but I was like, no, I remember like scared us too much to put it.
Yeah, no, I think when we were discussing it, we basically went, okay, which one should we go in? And the only thing everyone could really decide was not E.T. Okay, next question. In our Marvel character or not Marvel character, one of the questions was Mr. Green. Was Mr. Green a Marvel character or not a Marvel character?
He was not a Marvel character. He was a betting agent's character.
Yes, he was a betting agency we created ourselves.
I say no.
Yeah, I'm going to go with no.
Okay, so you believe that it is not a Marvel character, and the answer is, it is not a Marvel character. No, we've instead chose the betting agent, Mr. Green. What we should point out is there was indeed a Dr. Green, but you both acknowledged there was a bluff there. Next question. What caused Barney the dinosaur to be the colour that he is?
Oh, it's easy. He's eaten flamingos because apparently flamingos are pink as well they eat.
Yep, that is correct. So the algae that they eat has a certain chemical that changes that color. Because of your days as a youngster playing Zoo Tycoon and just letting dinosaurs into different animal, it just created the discussion.
Do you know what? I'm actually really intrigued. Flamingos turn pink because of the things they eat. I was just wondering if a dinosaur only was fed on flamingos, would he turn pink?
Is that what Barney the dinosaur is?
Oh, wow. He's a flamingo eater.
Come to get a realization here. Wow.
All right. So in our halfway through the year episode, we heard from the Real Experience's Joe Richards about one film that he was watching on Netflix that he hated, which is The Haunting of Sharon Tate.
Right.
He was describing the particular bad actors and said that it sounded as if they came from somewhere very specific. Where did he say that they came from?
Well, like a place.
Not a place as in like an area. So you're not thinking of like a country or a town.
Okay.
Say like, oh, they came from the pub or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, it wouldn't be anything too offensive.
Define too offensive.
Yeah. So what was the context again? Sorry, like
He was saying
actors were in
that the actors were awful and they sounded as if they came from somewhere.
Okay. A council estate.
That answer is. His exact answer was they sounded like they came next door from an adult film.
So I watched that with Hilary Duff, and that was dreadful.
If you grew up like me, Disney Channel, come on, people.
The fact you mentioned Hilary Duff, and in my head I just went awful.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are elements of it when I was like, this could be so bad that it's good, because I laughed so much. And it was as if, like, you know, some of the stars, I say loosely, have just kind of wandered next door from an adult video shoot, you know, just like literally not even changed their costumes.
I would have accepted from a porn shoot or something like that.
Okay, right. No,
That's what I was trying to get at.
My headspace was completely different with that.
You needed to think, where do bad actors usually come from?
Right, okay. Makes sense there.
Okay, next question. What Batman character did I claim that you were in our Joker episode?
Oh, I'm trying to think the exact name of it now. What's his name?
That is the question.
Yeah, I know it. It's the guy who put the coin in the Bat Cave. It is the Penny Plunderer.
Are you sure?
Yes. Or Plunderer, Penny Plunderer. Yeah.
Yep, it was the Penny Plunderer.
Cool.
The character's so bad he was written out of continuity.
Yeah, it doesn't help that the things like the Harley Quinn shows come out recently, so loads of villain names are in my head.
Yeah.
Then, so I was like, I feel a bit like Batman, who I've assembled.
Mate, you're not Batman. If anything, you're more like the Penny Plunderer.
I don't even know who that is.
Okay, so this is the last official question. This sounds really harsh when I read it, but you'll get it. So this is for 2 points.
Right.
Who is my new best friend, and what did they do to claim that title?
It is Lewis Hughes, and he guessed the name. He guessed the answer of Penguin in the weird "Who's that Pokemon?"
Yep, that is indeed correct.
Oh, God.
I feel the Penguin from Batman.
Yes! What?
Okay, so like I said, so those are the official questions. So let me just quickly count. Of a potential 11 points, you scored 8. So that's not bad going.
I think very reasonable, yeah. Better than my other game endeavors.
Yeah, well, now you have to go for a second bonus game.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm a big fan of the endgame. After all, I make most of them. But I want to know how much they had an impact on you. So obviously, we're still waiting for the outcome of the winner of our Star Trek endgame, Pitch Please 2.
Yeah.
But before that, we had 15 other endgames. What I would like you to do is tell me who won them all.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the name of each one. Then.
Oh, not the name of the endgame, no. So I want to see how many you get and how quickly you get them. So tell me when you think you're finished. Okay? Go.
So Matt Troy won the first one. Stefanos won the second one. The third one, Lewis won the third one. The fourth one, Dan won that one with the Florida Man. The fifth one, you won that one with the Pixar. Then the sixth one, that would be Joe won that one. The seventh one, that would have been... Well, actually, yeah, with that... Oh no, I missed out an episode here somewhere. Yeah, I know that I actually technically would have won one from Pitch Please 1. James Gay won one of them with Finish Our Sentences. the Matt won a second time as well when doing the Snap one. Chris Maxwell won. Ali Trinker won. Oh, that's it. Erin won the Disney sequels one. And the last one is Jake Hart won the Joker one. And was there a winner? Yeah, no, Laura won the Christmas one. Yeah, and that would be it, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so you named 14 of the 15.
Right. So the 15 would be the Star Trek. So
No.
Oh.
The Star Trek is the 16th.
Oh.
You never said who the winner of What's All the Hasselhoff About?
Of course, yes.
Who was also Laura.
Right, okay, yeah.
But to get 14 out of 15 correct, it took him 1 minute 29 seconds, which is it's not bad for our Dave.
Yeah.
So, all right. So
it helped earlier that we went through the entire guest list.
Well, I mean, you did that. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't really do much. So, but okay, so obviously you didn't play against anyone, but I did get you a little something.
Right. Okay.
Obviously we didn't really talk about it much, but you know you love Star Wars and you did a good job at memorizing information. So here's some more information with the Star Wars annual for 2020.
Oh, I haven't had an annual in absolutely years. I didn't realize they still did these.
Yeah, no, they still do them. They're it's really weird. There are challenges in there like spot the difference and color the Mandalorian.
Yeah, color Boba Fett.
Yeah,
I can make my own Boba Fett armor. And at the back of it just seems to be posters of the Rise of Skywalker.
Pretty much.
Okay.
It's a lot of concept art.
Yeah. Always very fun, challenging ourselves on our very own knowledge of our very own episodes. Thank you guys for listening to us. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Obviously, it's been a bit of a longer one with this one because it's been a very in-depth discussion, and we're talking about 10 years of movies and an entire sort of 7 to 8 months of film talk / well good movies at the end there as well. As Craig mentioned before as well, we will be revealing the winner of Pitch Please 2 in our next official episode. So this one is just sort of like a precursor episode in between our sort of like official shows, in which we'll find out who had the sort of more preferred pitch from Matt or Di. We look forward to that. Thank you for joining us and listening to us. If you do have any other opinions or films you would have liked to see put into the movie vault, or we would have liked to have mentioned in our films of the decade, then please do let us know on all our social medias. You can find us at Fresh Take Hub on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and you can catch this podcast at freshtakehub.com/wellgoodmovies, and you can get Well Good Movies on pretty much most of your podcast outlets. So thank you for joining us. I hope you've had a fantastic 2019. We've had an amazing year. We started the year, started in April with Film Talk. We've had lots of fun throughout the past few months. I want to give thanks to Cardiff Met University for being amazing hosts to recording this show. Today we're doing it from home because it's just the two of us, but usually we are sort of like trudging through the university with all our microphones and various endgame paraphernalia and mascots, etc. So thank you to them, and also Lucas Burks, who's the technician at the radio room, who has so kindly set up for us before and puts his time aside to make sure that we've got our time allocated to us. Thank you to all our guests who joined us in 2019 as well, and thank you to all our listeners and to everyone who supports us. We've got lots of stuff coming up in the year. If you are local to Cardiff, we're going to be having a social event for all the people who are our guests or loyal listeners. Check it out on our Facebook page. You can find details there. Craig, anything else from yourself?
I think also just thank you to everyone who's commented on any of our posts, whether that be any discussions around like the reviews that we've written, as well as like posting on like the wider Facebook Cardiff Film Group. With interesting discussions. You've given us like a lot of good ideas to work with in the past, as well as helpful feedback, which is definitely invaluable to us. Of like, thank you, and hopefully you enjoy this, and we can continue that sort of engagement with you guys going into the new year. It's
been a great celebration of the year in the past 10 years, which we've had a lot of like different inputs in, but it'll be very fun now when we sort of look hopefully to April, in which we'll sort of celebrate our first official year of running the podcast. And like I said, we've made loads of different friends. And as Craig said, we've had, thank you for everyone as well if you've rated this or subscribed to us on our various podcast outlets. And we've got lots of fun and exciting stuff coming your way. And I'm sure you can agree, Craig, I think the show is better than ever. And we've got some great format and great setups and great moments in the show that we really love working on, and I hope you love listening to them as well. So please give us your feedback, subscribe and rate as usual, and we'll have loads of very fun and different stuff coming throughout the year. And don't forget, like Craig also mentioned, our reviews. We've got Rise of Skywalker, Cats, Black Christmas, and we're sure to have many more between recording this, like Little Women, etc., up on the website right now. So thank you guys. I hope you had a fantastic 2019. Hope you have an amazing 2020. We will be there with you every 2 weeks to give you interesting and fun topics to talk about. And yeah, thank you very much for taking this journey with us. And remember, keep talking movies, and also remember those great films that we talked about from the decade. If you haven't checked any of them out, please do. Thank you, Craig. And I look forward to the new year. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. How do you even spell Cullinane?